The family of police shooting victim Khalil Lawal confronted Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner at the Netroots Nation conference that was recently held in Philadelphia. Family members confronted Krasner for his lack of responsiveness to the family in regard to Khalil's case. Krasner, a former civil rights attorney who was elected district attorney in 2018, is considered progressive for his willingness to prosecute police and for his efforts to implement equality-focused reforms. But Lawal's family and other activists raised issues that they believe point to Krasner's mishandling of several cases. Detective James Powell was off duty the night in January 2018 when he shot Khalil Lawal 15 times, claiming that Lawal charged him after Lawal returned to the scene where he was involved in injuring a pedestrian with his car. Lawal died at the scene, and he was unarmed. The pedestrian experienced minor injuries. Local Philadelphia media outlets revealed that toxicology reports indicated that Lawal was not under the influence of drugs or alcohol when the shooting occurred, but media outlets also claimed that Lawal intentionally hit the pedestrian and chased someone who tried to detain him before Detective Powell, again, who was off duty, arrived on the scene. Lawal's family not only refutes those allegations, but say that video of the incident obtained from surveillance cameras that they have seen tells a different story from what has been reported that mischaracterized their family member as the aggressor. And it is the release of this video, along with the lack of communication with the family during the DA's investigation into this case, that DA Krasner was confronted about during his panel at Netroots. Accompanied by two other family members and a group of Philadelphia activists, Crystal Evans, niece of Khalil Lawal, addressed Krasner about her uncle's case, demanding answers to questions about the case, and insisted that the video be released that she says proves her uncle was not the aggressor.
Can you first explain your reluctance or your office's reluctance to reach out to the family? First of all, and secondly, would you, now that we're up here for the day, we're not far, we're just in Northern Virginia, would you ever be willing to sit down with us? Because I believe at least we deserve an update on the status of this investigation at some point. It has been over a year and a half. And lastly, I ask that, why haven't you released the video of this killing? We see it all the time. I know you've seen it. I wonder if the only reason why I haven't released it is because his case is not in high profile as a few others. But at the end of the day, it is 15 shots, and you can never justify it. So if you could just answer those two questions for me, that'd be good.
Though polite, Krasner's answers did not satisfy Ms. Evans, but instead prompted the activists to raise other cases where Krasner's office has been seen as responding insufficiently at best or with outright callousness at worst. One such case is that of former police officer Thomas O'Neill, who was on duty when he handcuffed and sexually assaulted a woman in his police cruiser for 90 minutes. While O'Neill confessed to the crime, the former Philadelphia District Attorney's Office refused to prosecute the case and made a deal that resulted in O'Neill being sentenced to only 1 year in prison. Even the judge who ultimately signed off on the deal noted how unsatisfactory the deal was, saying, quote, "Quite frankly, I have real trouble with this plea. This is an extraordinarily troubling case because the conduct here is extraordinarily reprehensible and incomprehensible. Although Krasner's predecessor made the deal, activists charge that Krasner did nothing to intervene in the case when he took office. Krasner has never commented publicly on the record about the case, other than to note that the deal was made during a previous administration. The case of 59-year-old Ricardo Giddings was also raised. Giddings was shot and killed by a Philadelphia SWAT team that was serving a warrant for the arrest of Giddings' grandson. Giddings believed his home was being broken into at the time and shot at what he believed were home invaders. Giddings' wife was also shot in the incident, as was one of the officers.
Y'all know about the brother, the grandfather that was shot in Germantown when the police officer kicked his door in looking for the grandson? And the police officer, the SWAT team kicked the door down. Police officer killed the grandfather and shot his wife. And Larry Krasner said the police officer's life, it was in justifiable danger. It was justified. So that police officer was not charged. SWAT team stormed the man's home. He got up and said, "Oh, somebody stormed my house. Let me get up and shoot back." It was the SWAT team. This is a violent policing culture, right? So now a family is torn apart. The grandson heard about what happened and turned himself in. Wow, what a concept. Reach out to a person and not resort to immediate violence. So what I'm saying here right now is the police department and Larry Krasner often depend on each other to have validity.
The SWAT team raid that resulted in the death of Giddings and the injury of his wife was triggered by a social media post that allegedly showed the grandson holding a handgun. But the only weapon found in the Giddings home during the search was the one registered to Ricardo Giddings. The raid was carried out to serve a warrant for Giddings' grandson for weapons violation. Longtime activist Pam Africa, head of the International Concerned Friends and Family of Mumia Abu Jamal, raised concerns with Krasner's handling of not only Jamal's appeal, but also that of Kevin Brinkley, who was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of a milkman when he was 15 years old. But the attorney who prosecuted Brinkley 40 years ago now fights for the full exoneration of Brinkley. Gerald Duggan, now retired from the prosecutor's office and is in private practice, has publicly stated that after a trial witness recanted their testimony, after rereading the trial transcripts and determining that Brinkley did not have adequate defense counsel, and due to years of his own lingering doubts, he is now convinced that Brinkley is innocent and is working with the Innocence Project to exonerate him. However, rather than review the case to determine if Brinkley was the victim of a wrongful conviction and should be fully exonerated, Brinkley was released under the Juvenile Lifer Program, which allowed his life sentence to be commuted to 30 years. Having served 40 years already, Brinkley was approved for immediate release, but he will be on parole for the rest of his life for a crime Pam Africa contends that Larry Krasner's own office believes Brinkley did not commit.
Kevin Brinkley. Kevin Brinkley was a young brother who went to jail at the age of 15, accused of killing a white milkman. It was clear that the brother was innocent. Your DA, under your administration, admitted after 40 years of this, from 15 to 40 years later, and the DA comes up and say that the man was innocent. You released him under the Juvenile Lifers Program, meaning that from now on, he's on probation for the rest of his life, when you should have locked up the DA, locked up everyone that was involved in the framing. Yes. The 40-year framing. During that time, that young brother was beat, he was sodomized, and I'm saying, when you came in, his family, who vote all the time, I didn't vote for you, didn't vote for none of you, will never vote for you because I know how y'all are. How do you justify that young brother and who spent 40 years in jail for no reason at all, other than the fact that y'all had this God complex and y'all can just take black life and do it the way you want? This brother is on probation for the rest of his life after spending 40 years. You had nothing to say.
The exchange between Africa and Krasner became especially heated when Krasner seemed to compare Africa to Trump, as she brought up these issues compared to how the DA's office handled other cases involving white police officers who were shot.
Mr. Brinkley was released after 40 years, and you're mad at my administration because we agreed to things incorrectly after 40 years?
See, this is what I'm talking about
That's not how this works.
you. You play these games. This young man should have been set free. He should not have no probation based on facts from your DA.
Years ago, is that what you're saying? My DA.
Look, don't play these freaking games with me. Your office, the DA office. I don't give a damn which one was it, but you're in it now, and you haven't done nothing.
Is it my turn?
Yes, it is.
Well, thank you.
Monday 9 a.m.
So, one of the things you do when you layer truths and untruths one after the other and give no one a chance to respond is you create the false impression that what you have laid out is accurate. I know someone else who does this. He's in the White
You
House.
call me a liar? Are you calling me a liar, Larry?
You are saying things
You
that
say
are
I'm
untrue.
lying about what you did?
I'm saying
Are you saying I'm lying about
you are
what
saying
did?
things that are untrue.
What?
Though one panel member seemed to call security during the exchange, no security arrived to escort the group of protesters and activists out. And despite the fireworks between Krasner and Pam Africa, Larry Krasner did stay behind to speak to Crystal Evans after the activists left the room. As of the following Thursday, Crystal Evans, appearing at an event at Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ in Washington, D.C., reported that the DA's office has contacted them, but they're still waiting for a meeting with Larry Krasner.